I'm the M in the LAM Sisterhood.
And I'm Alea Qasim, the A in the LAM Sisterhood. And we are a content studio that fills the world with stories for African women to feel seen, heard, and beloved. And right here as residents,
Innovators-In-Residence.
We have been working on the Brazen Universe.
So the Brazen Universe began several years ago before we even formed a company, when we first did the Brazen Edition stage show, which was co-produced by Too Early for Birds. And, it was a big success, lots of awards, sold out shows, etc. And even in the production of that, we realized there's a lot more content, there's a lot more stories. In that show, we uninvisibled the lives and the stories of 6 Kenyan women from history who fundamentally changed the shape of this country. And we realized across the continent there's many women whose stories and lives have been invisibled. And so even back then we thought, we want to do something for kids, maybe we should do a podcast, maybe we should do this. And it was like the seedling of the Brazen Universe. Then several years the next year we registered our company, realized that actually there's potential for this to be not just a wonderful thing to do, but a sustainable thing to do, a potentially even profitable thing to do. So then we applied for the Aga Khan residency with the concept of the Brazen Universe, taking this idea that's been there from the beginning. What happens if we're in a space that provides us resources, training, to take it from one level to the other? So our original product for this program was going to be the Brazen Podcast, which is an adult podcast focusing on same thing, women from history and contemporary women talking about their lives. And that particular concept was shortlisted by the BBC podcast program, by Google PRX, and it's wonderful. But we learned through the program, time planning and management and resources, and like how you take it so that you're not like burnt out all the time. And we found that particular product, while wonderful, was very resource intensive, both expensive and time consuming, and would require a lot of people, a lot of team that even this wonderful residency was going to be able to provide. So we decided to pivot to a children's podcast called Brazen. And that's, again, a concept we developed way before the program. So we performed children's stories with Book Bank at the Kaloleni Social Hall to like over 200-300 children. And, they were just like, oh my God, what's happening? They loved it. It was great. And we all our aunties, missing who's not here is Laura. So all of us with our nibblings were just like, we just want our nibblings to hear stories that we're telling them. And so, especially in the pandemic, you're not seeing them. So you want them to hear stories from you. And so when we pivoted to Brazen, which was really revealing, it's been a wonderful kind of process because it's a little bit less resource heavy and simultaneously a lot more creatively challenging, because children don't care about your feelings at all. If they're bored, they're bored. If it's not working, it's not working. And so how do you make something that's really compelling to them in a medium that sometimes even parents don't realize that children are actually probably the most avid podcast listeners, because they're young and listening is the first way they learn is through listening. So maybe Alea can talk more about the process itself.
Yeah, there's this really interesting myth, I think, where people think that children have small attention spans, but every time we've played this podcast to children, they really pay attention. And the stories are kind of 10 to 15 minutes long, and they're completely enthralled. And so one of the things we've discovered recently is just how much they love the stories, which is a really exciting discovery because we've been working at it for a long time. At this stage, we're now in production. We haven't completed, but we're in production and planning to release early next year at the African Podcast Festival. So the three of us came together. All three of us are writers and performers, and performance is what brought us together in the first place. One of the things that's really been interesting about our time here also is discovering this thirst and hunger for performance in different spaces and tapping into like the virtual space as a performance space. So that's a product that we've developed whilst we've been here. We've performed at RightsCon, we've performed at Partners Innovation Festival, performed at the East Festival, and then we're really excited to be sharing some of the Brazen stories at the kids event at AKU in a couple of days. Ooh.
I think some of my favorite trainings have been, I really enjoyed what's it called? We're just talking about this. My brain has just gone.
Human-centered design?
That's the one, the human-centered design one. It's a thing I've learned from other programs as well, but it was nice kind of seeing a different aspect to it and finding language to a process that we have always done intuitively. Every product we've ever developed, every single one from the first play, we'd create, we'd vision, draft, do, I guess what's a test, but we'd call it like sensitivity readings or do public readings. That's actually part of theater practice, is you do readings and performances before you go on stage. So now finding this other language that's like more technical, that like explains the process we had, why our process takes so long, was really wonderful. That was really, really powerful. And it's also been nice working with the team. So grant accounting is grant accounting, is all I can say. It's a lot of work. But working with the team who, like Claire has been really wonderful at like helping us be like, okay, this is why you have to put this in this order, this is how you put this together. It's been such a powerful lesson where I know now, even going forward into the future, it's helped us build some systems, like, a procurement system. What do 3 playwrights do with procurement systems? But here we are having an entire procurement system. It's wonderful. Like all these different systems that are so outside of the realm of how we work have been able to be developed through trial and error. Some things were very challenging, some things took a lot of work, but with a lot of support from the team as well as through some of the trainings, it's been useful to figure out what it looks like to shift from a small kind of 3 friends coming together to do wonderful work into a sustainable company that can create and expand and do wonderful work, hopefully across the continent.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big challenges has been balancing the creative work with the kind of setup of the company, and it has been frustrating at times.
Yeah.
And one thing that's been really helpful is the residency gives you an opportunity, a safe space, a security net, so that even if you do fail, you're still okay, It gives you a space to try a bunch of things out. And so I feel like now we're kind of poised for the next step.
Yeah.
And we're ready for bigger and better, whereas I think if we hadn't gone through this rigorous process, I'm not sure me personally, I'd feel as confident stepping into the next step.
Yeah.
So whilst frustrating, it has been useful and definitely an investment. The trainings, I think, if you consider them less as I need to be trained for this moment and more, this is training that's going to help me into the long run of this company, that really, really kind of changes how you approach them and how you apply them.
I think the biggest change in the team has been actually us discovering we're a content studio was probably the most impactful shift, because it helped us realize if as a content studio, the goal isn't necessarily to have 800 people. It's to have the right people for the right piece of content. And so what's happened is we've kind of realized like, oh, okay, so for Brazen, you need a research consultant. So we worked with somebody for 3 months, and we have some fantastic interns who are really experienced working with us, and volunteers actually. They volunteered, like at least you have to intern, who are working with us to take us to the next phase. We've also developed some fantastic partnerships. So working with Africa Podcast Festival, which is where we'll be launching the children's podcast, which will help us, get out and do the marketing. Working with Zaki Kwetu Productions, who's been a long-time partner, so formalizing that a little bit better, and so that we have a long-term production partner for all the episodes. Working with looking at who else, even working with people outside of the country, working with partners who aren't around, and people we reach out to who are also now like, oh, my kids are really on me, that's fabulous. You want to do a show at a planetarium? Let me hold that and chase it. And people are like looking for opportunities with us in a way that I think the year before we were very nervous about letting our babies go out into the world and partnering with people. Mm-hmm. And we're like, no, we're a content studio. So if you want to make a lot of content, find the right people to help make it happen and partner with them and see what goes on. So the core team is still the three of us. We're hoping that, you know, because we've had this landing space, we've applied for some opportunities, we're getting more work, that we'll be able to expand a little bit, you know, get like a production manager and things like that. But I suspect we'll always stay a relatively small team. I don't even, you know, even if we have billions, I suspect it'll be like, you guys are only 10, you're only 20. I don't think we'll be that many ever, but we've really learned a lot about how to build and rely on strong partnerships, how to look for and recruit the right people for the right moment and for the right project and see. And like even sometimes it doesn't work, and that's also fine. We've learned what happens when a relationship doesn't work out and what you do to pivot and shift and grow. So it's been I think in terms of the team, it's been really wonderful seeing less like a small growth like this, like a I don't know, not like a tick growing big. That's such a bad metaphor. Just because you're a big team doesn't mean you're a tick. Less like an animal growing bigger and more like a spider web, like building this. Yes, the hub is small, but like what the spider web has grown a lot bigger, and like there's a lot more connections and networks that have formed over the last year.
Yeah, and I think also this idea that, you know, our ambitions are big. And if we want to, you know, create a universe, then you need, you know, the people to make that happen. Yeah. And so again, kind of going back to those systems that then mean that you can have the teams that you need to deliver the dreams that you have. One of the things that's been really great about this grant is that there's been room to invest in equipment, and that isn't necessarily true of other grants. You know, and as a media company, your equipment really are such important assets, and it enables you to make the work. So that's been something that's been really great. The stipend, you know, means that, you know, it's hard being a startup, right? Like, so I'm not going to say that, you know, it's not able to fully take care of your needs, but it keeps you going a little bit, you know. I think, you know, I think it was either our mentor or our coach that said, if you look at this grant as a sort of a way to experiment with a product, you know, in a way that it would be difficult to do otherwise, it means that you can then kind of look at what does it take to produce this thing and really map it out across the year and be intentional about that, which I think is great. So if you know you're getting this investment, what's the best use of that investment, and what can that investment enable you to produce that will then help you get
next level.
Future investments, you know. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
I think challenge as a team, I'd say, but you might have a different opinion as well, is I think really learning the institutional shift has been very, very challenging. Because again, we're creatives, we're artists. The thing we want to do most in the world is just make and tell stories. And when you're shifting into an institution that's a little bit more formalized, that has systems which are very, very necessary, it's very time consuming. It took a long time in the program for us to actually begin making what we set out to make. You know, it took a while for us to sign, it took a while for money to come in, it took a while for us to like set up all the work plans. So by the time we started the work, we're like about more than halfway in. So we're like, we're halfway in, what haven't we made? So that was very, very challenging. I think that was one of the biggest challenges. And then of that, now balancing, once we started making a little bit more often, balancing the kind of institutionalizing work we just need to bring in money to pay rent work, and then separately the just creative work. Like, what does it take to make the product that we set out to make in the beginning? Holding those 3 balls in the air was, and continues to be, very tough. It's something I think we're gonna, at every creative company we've talked to, even mentors outside of this program has said, if you're in a creative space, that's probably gonna be the thing you're gonna struggle with the most. And until you find your way of doing it, it's always gonna be a challenge.
And then, of course, what that means is that, your plans change. So that's, one thing I found really frustrating, but also I feel like maybe I just have to get used to that as a way of being, is that, when you are needing to bring in money for survival, the time that takes up means that then there's less time for the making. So what you had planned to do now shifts. So you're back into work planning. And so there's a trap where you're possibly spending so much time planning, but actually it's not possible because the conditions are always shifting.
Yeah.
And I think that that's not just for us and for a startup. I think that especially in pandemic times, conditions have been shifting so much. It's been so difficult to plan for anybody. So I suspect this is something that a lot of people would say.
Yeah.
What I will say about the grant that has been extraordinary is that our overhead costs are minimal.
Yeah.
Which means that actually we're very rarely in the red. There are other businesses there's another business that I'm involved in that has high overhead costs. And month after month, you start, the pressure of not meeting those overhead costs means that you're digging deeper into the red. This grant has meant that we haven't had that yet.
Having an office is truly a gift. That's what truly. And the flexibility, it's been very nice. Like, we've been able to extend till a little bit into next year. So like having a team that's like, even when we came, they're like, don't worry, you'll extend. We're like, what do you mean? You'll be fine, you'll extend. And so when it happened, I was like, thank you. I'm glad you saw that coming from far. Of startups, which we had to learn.
I think so. That's been a learning. It's like, I think we came, the 3 of us we're very different, but we are similar in the sense that there's a certain quality of work that we're trying to get to, certain level of control that we feel like we need to have. And one thing that we've had to kind of succumb a little bit and surrender is that control, that you aren't always in control of things, but how do you shift and pivot and kind of keep agile, whilst also keeping your eye on the thing that you want to achieve. It's been challenging, but it's also been kind of fun.
Yeah, it's been nice discovering parts about ourselves which we didn't know we had.
Yeah.
I'll say, for me, one has been very much so being much more open and reaching out in terms of talking to people, partnerships, trusting people. There's a couple of partners we're working with. I'm like, you have the concept to go with God. Let me know what happens. I don't even know what they're pitching on, how it's happening. We have a relationship. I trust them implicitly. But me last year, I would never have done that. I would never be like, I have to be in every meeting. I have to be CC'd in every email. And then, after a year of being with all those balls in there, I'm like, I don't have the time. So I trust you, go, and sharing things at very raw stage. Also, again, as an artist, especially writing is my core profession. Like my core, not really profession, like my core form of artistry is writing. And writers are you just want to hide in a wall and write for 17 years and you don't want to share anything unless it's perfect. So being like, I kind of have a loose idea. What do you think is so unusual for me? So I think that being able to share and build networks and trust people came out of this program for me a lot. And I think the second has been learning who I am as an entrepreneur. Like, what is my entrepreneur personality, if I can call it that? Like, what are the things that really matter to me that I won't compromise on, and what are the things that I'm very happy to kind of figure out? So, if it's arguing with a client who's like, no, you shouldn't talk about those subjects, I'm like, but I will. So now, what I do? I'm not going to talk about it. So now let's figure out how I can talk about it in a way that makes sense for you. Or And at the same time being able to say like, oh, let me release that, or these are the things I have to do that I really hate doing. Maybe I need to get help in doing these things, and these things are kind of boring, but I actually don't mind doing that. Like learning what matters to me as a businesswoman, not just as an artist, has been a really, really big shift. I think it's changing how I'm interacting with people, what kind of opportunities I'm willing to seek out, both for myself and for the business, because I have a much clearer sense of who I am in that space.
I think for me, the first thing is a sort of stepping into certainty. I'm not in my 20s. So I've got a profession, I'm almost not in my 30s. I have a couple of decades of experience. And when you're starting out, in a startup kind of ecosystem, I guess last year there was just less, there was more of an imposter syndrome, more of like, tentative, like, should I do this? Can I do this? Whereas this year there was no time for that. If you were going to do the things that you wanted to do, you just have to do them, and you just have to like be confident and not ask for permission, but ask for forgiveness if necessary. So it's sort of like stepping into that. I feel different at the end of this year than I did at the beginning of this year, and I think a lot of it is down to actually what we achieved over the course of the year. Like we really pushed ourselves, but when I look back, I'm really proud of what we've done, and who we've become and how we've worked together. So that's one thing. And then I think the second thing is kind of, thinking about having multiple, income streams, multiple pipelines. So you have projects that are nascent at idea stage, you have projects that you're implementing in this moment, you have projects that now go out into the world. So kind of being able to zoom out and see our company, but also our dreams from slightly a bird's eye view, is something that I think I have a better capacity to do now than I did perhaps earlier. Yeah.
So finally, I know you've spent most times with Claire and Benson.
Mm-hmm. So what's wonderful about Caleb?
My job is mostly in the back foreshadow.
They're both so supportive,
Incredible.
truly supportive,
Yeah.
in every way.
Mm-hmm.
They have, like, Claire has taught us things about like financial management that we will use forever.
Yeah.
And Benson has been incredibly generous with his time, with his knowledge, with his networks. Anytime he thinks that there's something that could be useful for us, it's there.
Messages.
It's in the inbox. It's
Claire's always sending me the reminder. Have you sent the invoice for the stipend? Send it today. Send it now because I'm going to the office. Do it. Like she's constantly pushing and like making sure whatever we need, this is what you have to do to be ready. How can I help you get there? This is what's missing. Going over all our documents and coming back like, okay, fix this, fix that. Same thing. Benson forever. Like, what do you need? How do you need it? Where do you need it? Like, really incredibly supportive and fun. They're also just nice people.
like rooting for you to win.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you just feel like, you have a team that is really rooting for you to win.
Yeah.
That's really cool. For me, I think it's find your people.
Yeah.
Like, it's tough, right? Like, and I don't know at what point, if ever, it stops being tough. What's really helped me get through, and even us, I think, as an organization, is finding the people who you can share your struggles with, who can give you words of advice, or even if it's not words of advice, who just are there to be like, Akiwoye.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Find your community. That's what it comes down to. And your community may not be startups. Your community might be artists, it might be, other African women, it might be children, I don't know, whatever it is. Like, find your community, invest in your community, like have, create relationships and invest in those relationships as well. Not as an investment, but as in a, like, this is a thing that's going to fuel you and be there for them as much as they are there for you.
Yeah, I'd say, one, make sure you take care of yourself. I think if there's a year the pandemic, I think the pandemic has taught us is, and by take care of yourself, I don't mean being selfish, but I mean really actually take care of yourself. Because when you're a startup, like, and you're an entrepreneur and it's something you're passionate about, you lose sleep, you won't eat, you'll spend 7 days a week working, and you spend 7 nights a week dreaming about the thing. Take care of yourself. Find ways to make sure, that the whole, when an airplane is crashing, put the oxygen on yourself first. It's not just a metaphor, it's necessary. Like, don't feel bad about taking the moments and the time you need to be healthy, to be capable, because it's only going to be better for you and your organization. And I think the second thing is, trust the process. Some things you just have to just be done. Some things don't work out, and then you have to start again, and it's very hard, and you're always like, but why? And it's, you'll 9 times out of 10, you'll be fine. You will. I say this, also play this for me like in an hour and a half, because I'll probably need to hear it. But but it's the truth that I have to constantly remind myself of, that just take care of yourself. It's very important. I think especially after this pandemic, learning that your health is number one has been a big lesson for me. And number two, just trust the process. Sometimes things work, sometimes they don't, and that's okay.
The maker of this product did not use human-centered design. It's beautiful to look at, isn't it? It's really pretty. It's even nifty, look. Ta-da! But look what happens when you drink. It's a problem.
HCD, my friends, come for the training.
And for you, which is
Product testing.
Not to answer that. I'll say the hoodie.
And also that phone thing was pretty cool.
The phone thing was really cool. The phone thing was very nice. I don't have it on mine. No, I had mine and that was the phone that was stolen. It's the whole thing. But the hoodie is very nice. I'm about that hoodie. I wear it a lot, actually.
And even the water bottle.
Yeah, I haven't used mine yet. The merch has been cool.
Yeah,
Take the merch.
It's
The merch is lit. Like that, I'll say this one has finished me because I haven't used it yet. Me, I'm dead because I've not used it yet. So
I never looked at it that.
no,
Listen.
it's me.